Ethan Walker stared at his phone screen in absolute horror. The message he'd just sent, "I love you, sweetheart, sweet dreams," glowed mockingly beneath a name that made his blood run cold. Claire Monroe. Not Ava. Not his 7-year-old daughter, his boss, the CEO of Monroe Industries. The woman whose icy professionalism had become legendary in Boston's corporate circles. His thumb hovered over the phone, trembling, as if he could somehow unsend the words that had just detonated his entire career. 3 years of careful invisibility, of being the reliable operations manager who never made waves, who always delivered, who needed this job more than air itself, gone. Destroyed by one moment of exhausted distraction at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. What happens when a single father's most intimate words land in the hands of the most untouchable woman in Boston? When the mistake you can't take back becomes the beginning of something you never saw coming. Stay with me until the end of this story. I promise you won't see where this goes. And drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this journey travels. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The panic didn't hit immediately. For approximately 4 seconds, Ethan's brain simply refused to process what had happened. He sat on the edge of his worn couch in his South Boston apartment, the soft glow of Ava's nightlight visible through her half-open bedroom door, and his mind went completely blank. Then reality crashed through like a wrecking ball. No, 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 no. The words came out as a whisper, desperate and disbelieving. He jabbed at the screen, trying to delete the message, but the laws of digital communication were merciless. Delivered. Read. 11:48 p.m. She'd already seen it. Ethan's hand moved to his face, fingers pressing against his temples as if he could physically prevent his entire world from imploding. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. He'd been so careful for 3 years. Since Sarah died. Since he'd rebuilt his life from ashes into something that functioned, something that kept Ava safe and fed and loved. The job at Monroe Industries wasn't glamorous. Operations management meant he lived in spreadsheets and logistics, solving problems most people never knew existed, but it was stable. The benefits were good. The salary let him afford this apartment in a decent neighborhood with decent schools. It was everything. And he'd just told his boss he loved her. His phone buzzed. Ethan's stomach lurched so violently he thought he might be sick. With a hand that didn't feel like his own, he turned the screen over. Claire Monroe. I assumed this was meant for someone else. The message was clean, professional, completely devoid of emotion, which was somehow worse than anger would have been. Ethan could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Each beat a countdown to unemployment, to explaining to Ava why they had to move, why Daddy lost his job, why everything was falling apart again. His fingers moved across the screen, deleting and retyping 4 times before he managed to send a response that didn't make things worse. Ethan Walker. Ms. Monroe, I am so incredibly sorry. That message was intended for my daughter. Completely inappropriate error on my part. My sincerest apologies. He watched the screen. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, Claire Monroe. Understood. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Ethan set the phone down on the coffee table like it might explode. Then he stood, paced to the window, came back and dropped onto the couch with his head in his hands. Discuss this tomorrow. That meant a meeting. That meant HR. That meant, Daddy? Ava's voice cut through the spiral of panic. Ethan's head snapped up to find his daughter standing in her doorway, clutching the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her 3 months before the cancer took her. Ava's dark curls were sleep mussed, her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, filled with concern that no 7-year-old should have to feel. Ethan immediately shifted his entire demeanor, the mask of capable father sliding into place with practiced ease. Hey, sweetheart, what are you doing up? You were talking loud. Ava patted across the room in her unicorn pajamas. Are you okay? I'm fine, baby. Just had a work thing. Nothing for you to worry about. He opened his arms and she climbed onto the couch beside him, fitting perfectly under his arm the way she always had. Did I wake you? Kind of. She yawned, the elephant tucked against her chest. I had a dream about Mommy. Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah? What kind of dream? She was making pancakes, the ones with the chocolate chips. Ava looked up at him. She said to tell you it's okay to be happy. The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan pulled his daughter closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head while he tried to breathe through the sudden ache in his chest. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah's funeral, since he'd become both parents, since he'd learned to braid hair and pack lunches and sign permission slips while pretending his heart wasn't a broken thing held together with responsibility and routine. That sounds like a good dream, he managed. Will you tuck me in again? Always. He carried her back to bed, though she was really getting too big for it, and tucked the covers around her with the specific pattern she preferred. Elephant on the left, favorite blanket folded at the bottom, nightlight angled just right. I love you, sweetheart, Ethan whispered, the words he'd meant to send her now spoken where they belonged. Sweet dreams. Love you too, Daddy. Ava's eyes were already closing. Don't worry so much. You always figure it out. If only that were true. Back in the living room, Ethan didn't sleep. He couldn't. He spent the night on the couch, watching the ceiling and running through increasingly catastrophic scenarios. By the time dawn crept through the windows, he'd mentally prepared for everything from immediate termination to a formal sexual harassment investigation. The morning routine with Ava was autopilot. Breakfast, backpack check, walk to the bus stop 3 blocks away. She chattered about her upcoming science project while Ethan nodded in the right places, his mind already at Monroe Industries, already standing in Claire Monroe's office, trying to explain the inexplicable. Earth to Daddy. Ava tugged his hand. You're doing the worried face again. Sorry, Bug. What were you saying? I said Mrs. Patterson wants us to pick our project partners today. Can Maya come over this weekend to work on ours? Sure. We'll figure it out. The bus appeared at the end of the street. Ethan crouched down to Ava's level. Have a great day, okay? I'll pick you up at 3. You're going to be okay, Daddy. She said it with such certainty, such complete faith in him, that Ethan almost believed it. Then she climbed onto the bus, waved through the window, and disappeared into her world where fathers didn't send catastrophically inappropriate messages to their bosses. The train ride into downtown Boston felt like a journey to an execution. Ethan stood pressed among the morning commuters, watching the city roll past while dread settled like concrete in his stomach. Monroe Industries occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. He'd worked there for 3 years and had spoken to Claire Monroe directly maybe a dozen times. She was a presence more than a person, brilliant, driven, utterly self-contained. The kind of executive who could read a quarterly report and identify problems 3 layers deep, who expected excellence and had no patience for excuses. She was 42, though she looked younger. Tall, with ash blonde hair always pulled back in a way that suggested she couldn't be bothered with vanity. She wore suits like armor, spoke in precise sentences that never wasted words, and ran board meetings with the efficiency of a surgical strike. People respected her. Some feared her. None claimed to know her, and Ethan had told her he loved her. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt interminable. Ethan stepped out into the operations department, past the rows of cubicles and the colleagues who had no idea his career was circling the drain. His own office, a small space with a window view of another building, felt like a cell. He'd barely set down his bag when his email pinged. From Claire Monroe. Subject, meeting. Message, my office, 9 a.m. Ethan checked his watch. He had 17 minutes. He spent them trying to compose a resignation letter that didn't sound desperate, then gave up and simply waited for the inevitable. At 8:59, he walked to the executive suite. Claire's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who'd been with Monroe Industries longer than Ethan had been alive, looked up from her desk. She's expecting you. Go ahead. The door to Claire Monroe's office was heavy oak, the kind that suggested permanence and power. Ethan knocked once, heard a crisp, "Come in," and stepped into the space that would determine his future. Claire's office was exactly what he'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, minimalist furniture, shelves lined with industry awards, and a single photograph of her standing beside an older couple he assumed were her parents. No personal touches, no warmth, just clean lines and the faint scent of coffee from the expensive machine in the corner. Claire herself sat behind her desk, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. She wore a charcoal suit, her blonde hair pulled back in that familiar way, and when her gray eyes met his, Ethan felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Mr. Walker, sit." He sat. His mouth was dry. Claire studied him for a long moment. Then she said, "Before we begin, I need to ask you a direct question, and I need an honest answer." "Of course." "Was last night's message genuinely intended for your daughter, or was it a poorly conceived advance?" The bluntness was almost a relief. "My daughter, I swear to you, Ms. Monroe, I was exhausted. I was texting her goodnight, and I hit the wrong contact. It was a mistake, a stupid, careless mistake, but nothing more than that." Claire's expression didn't change. "You have a daughter?" "Yes, Ava. She's 7. "And you're a single father?" "I am. My wife passed away 3 years ago." Something flickered across Claire's face, so brief Ethan might have imagined it. "I see. And what time do you typically send these messages?" "Around 11. After Ava's asleep. He hesitated. "It's our routine. I tell her I love her, even if she can't read it until morning." The silence that followed was excruciating. Claire's gaze never wavered, and Ethan forced himself to meet it, to show he had nothing to hide. Finally, Claire leaned back in her chair. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Walker, and I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. However, we still need to address this situation." She opened a folder on her desk. "I've reviewed your employment record, 3 years with Monroe Industries, consistently high performance ratings, no disciplinary issues. Your department runs efficiently, you meet deadlines, and according to your manager, you're one of the most reliable people on staff." Ethan didn't know where this was going, which somehow made it worse. "That said," Claire continued, "this incident represents a violation of professional boundaries. Even if unintentional, it creates potential complications. I'm sure you understand why." "I do, completely." Ethan's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Ms. Monroe, I need this job. I'm prepared to accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate, but I'm asking you to please consider that I have a daughter depending on me. If there's any way to move forward from this, I will do whatever it takes to ensure it never happens again." Claire's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her eyes. "What would you do if I terminated you right now?" The question was clinical, curious, devoid of threat. Ethan answered honestly. "I'd update my resume, contact every professional connection I have, and start applying to anything I'm qualified for. I'd cut our expenses to the bone. I'd probably have to pull Ava out of her after-school program, which she loves, and I'd figure out childcare around job interviews. I'd make it work because I don't have another option." "You wouldn't fight it? File a complaint?" "What would be the point? I'm the one who made the mistake." Ethan met her eyes. "I'm not asking for fairness, Ms. Monroe. I'm asking for mercy." The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. Claire set down the folder and steepled her fingers again, her gaze never leaving his face. "I'm not going to terminate you, Mr. Walker." Relief flooded through him so intensely his vision actually blurred. "Thank you, thank you." "However," Claire continued, "I'm going to make some changes. First, you will attend a mandatory professional boundaries training. HR will schedule it. Second, we're going to establish clear communication protocols. All work-related messages to me will go through Patricia unless it's an emergency. Third, she paused. You're going to help me understand something. Ethan blinked. I'm sorry? You've worked here for 3 years. You manage operations for one of our largest divisions. You clearly have significant responsibilities. Yet in that time, I've never known you were a single father. I've never known you had a daughter at all. Claire's tone shifted, became less formal. How do you do it? Balance this job with raising a child alone? The question was so unexpected, so strangely personal, that Ethan didn't know how to respond. I don't know if I'd call it balance. It's more like constant negotiation. I make it work because I have to. Explain. My day starts at 5:30. I get Ava ready for school, walk her to the bus, then take the train here. I work through lunch most days so I can leave by 2:45 to pick her up at 3. I finish whatever I couldn't complete during the day after she goes to bed, usually between 9 and midnight. Weekends are for grocery shopping, laundry, her activities, and any big projects I couldn't handle during the week. He shrugged. It's not sustainable long term, but it's what I've got. Claire's expression was unreadable. You leave at 2:45? I make up the hours at night. My performance hasn't suffered. I'm aware. I'm just surprised I never noticed. I try not to draw attention to it. People make assumptions about single parents, that we're unreliable, that we'll prioritize our kids over work. I can't afford those assumptions. So you hide it. I manage it discreetly. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that completely threw Ethan off balance. I grew up in foster care. 6 different homes between the ages of 8 and 18. Do you know what the most important lesson I learned was? Ethan shook his head. That survival requires compartmentalization. You put the trauma in a box, the fear in another box, the loneliness in a third. You lock them all away and you focus on what you can control. School, work, achievement. It's the only way to build something stable from nothing. Her gray eyes met his. You remind me of that, Mr. Walker. You've compartmentalized your grief, your exhaustion, your entire personal life into a box labeled handle later, so you can focus on the boxes labeled daughter and career. Am I wrong? The accuracy of it was startling. No, you're not wrong. It's effective, but it's also unsustainable. Eventually, the boxes overflow. Claire closed the folder. Here's what I'm proposing. You keep your job. You attend the training. And in exchange, you stop pretending you don't have a daughter who needs you at 3 p.m. Adjust your schedule officially. Work from home when you need to. Stop burning yourself out trying to be invisible. Ethan stared at her. Why? Because your performance is valuable to this company and losing you would be inefficient. Because pretending our employees don't have lives outside these walls is short-sighted management. And because, she paused, something vulnerable flickering across her features before the professional mask returned. Because I understand what it's like to build a life from broken pieces. I'm not interested in making that harder for you. The words settled between them, laden with unexpected weight. Ethan didn't know what to say. This wasn't the conversation he'd expected. This wasn't the Claire Monroe he'd observed from a distance for 3 years. Thank you, he finally managed. I don't know what else to say except thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing your job well. Claire stood, signaling the meeting's end. Patricia will send you the updated schedule parameters. We'll revisit this arrangement in 3 months to ensure it's working for both of us. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Ethan stood as well, still trying to process what had just happened. He was halfway to the door when Claire spoke again. Mr. Walker? He turned. Yes? For what it's worth, your daughter is lucky to have a father who says, I love you every night, even when she's asleep. Don't lose that in the pursuit of professional invisibility. The words hit somewhere deep in Ethan's chest, in the place where he kept Sarah's memory and Ava's future and his own desperate hope that he was doing enough. He managed a nod, not trusting his voice, and left the office. Outside, Patricia handed him a folder without comment. Your new schedule parameters and the training enrollment. Ms. Monroe works fast. Apparently, Ethan took the folder, still dazed. Thank you. The walk back to his office felt surreal. He'd walked in expecting termination and walked out with, what? Accommodation? Understanding? He couldn't quite name it. But when he checked the folder and saw that his schedule had been officially adjusted, 3 p.m. departure with flex hours clearly documented, no questions asked, something tight in his chest loosened slightly. Maybe, just maybe, the mistake hadn't destroyed everything after all. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and logistics. Ethan dove into work with renewed focus, determined to prove that Claire's unexpected grace hadn't been misplaced. But at 2:45 p.m., instead of sneaking out through the back stairwell like he usually did, he walked out through the main entrance with his head up. Ava was waiting at pickup with her usual enthusiasm, backpack bouncing as she ran to hug him. Daddy, guess what? Mrs. Patterson said our project can be about volcanoes. That's great, Bug. Ethan hoisted her backpack over his shoulder. Tell me all about it. On the walk home, while Ava chattered about tectonic plates and lava flows with 7-year-old intensity, Ethan's phone buzzed. He checked it at the next stoplight. Claire Monroe. One more thing. The message last night, it wasn't wrong, just misdirected. Your daughter is fortunate. Have a good evening, Mr. Walker. Ethan read the message twice, something warm and unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It wasn't attraction, not exactly. It was recognition, the sense of being seen by someone who understood what it meant to survive, to build something from nothing, to carry weight that never fully lifted. He didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't complicate things further. But as he and Ava crossed the street toward their apartment, the catastrophe he'd feared began to feel like something else entirely. Like a door opening instead of closing, like the beginning of something he hadn't known he needed. The evening fell into familiar patterns: homework at the kitchen table, dinner that Ava helped prepare, bath time with negotiations about hair washing, and finally, stories before bed. Ethan sat beside her while she chose 3 books from the shelf, her nightly limit. Daddy? Ava asked as he closed the 3rd book. Are you still worried about work? Not as much as I was this morning. Good, because you're the best daddy, and your boss should know that. Ethan smiled, kissing her forehead. I think maybe she does. Now sleep, okay? Big day tomorrow. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. This time the words went exactly where they belonged. But as Ethan closed Ava's door and returned to the living room to finish the day's work, he found himself thinking about Claire Monroe's gray eyes and unexpected kindness, about compartmentalized grief and broken pieces built into something stable. He'd spent 3 years being invisible, protecting the fragile equilibrium of his reconstructed life. But maybe invisibility wasn't the same as safety. Maybe being seen, really seen, by someone who understood could be something else entirely. Ethan opened his laptop and got to work, the city lights flickering outside his window like possibilities he wasn't quite ready to name. The wrong message had landed exactly where it needed to, after all, just not in the way he'd imagined. The city lights outside Ethan's window had dimmed to a soft glow by the time he finally closed his laptop that night. The work was done, the crisis averted, and yet sleep remained elusive. He kept replaying Claire's words in his mind, the unexpected understanding in her voice, the way she'd seen through 3 years of carefully constructed invisibility in a single conversation. It unsettled him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. The next morning arrived with Ava's alarm clock blaring at 6:30, and the routine resumed its familiar rhythm. But when Ethan walked into Monroe Industries at 8:15 instead of his usual 7:45, something felt different. He wasn't sneaking anymore. The change was subtle but significant. He nodded to colleagues in the elevator, grabbed coffee from the break room, settled into his office with a sense of legitimacy he hadn't realized he'd been missing. His email pinged at 9:30. From Patricia Chen, Executive Assistant to CEO. Subject: Schedule adjustment confirmation. Message: Mr. Walker, please find attached your updated employment agreement reflecting your new schedule parameters. Ms. Monroe has also requested your presence at the 2 p.m. Executive Operations Review. She specifically asked for your analysis on the 3rd quarter logistics efficiency report. Ethan read the message 3 times. Executive Operations Review. He'd never been invited to one of those. They were high-level strategy sessions where Claire met with department heads and senior management. Operations managers didn't typically attend unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. He spent the next 4 hours preparing, pulling data on shipping routes, warehouse efficiency metrics, cost per unit analyses. If Claire wanted his expertise, he'd make damn sure he had answers worth hearing. At 1:55 p.m., Ethan gathered his materials and headed to the executive conference room. The space was all glass walls and sleek furniture with a view that stretched across Boston Harbor. 6 people were already seated around the table, division heads he recognized by face, if not by name. And at the head of the table, reviewing documents with that characteristic focus, sat Claire Monroe. She looked up as he entered. Mr. Walker, good. We're ready to begin. Ethan took the only empty seat, acutely aware of being the lowest-ranking person in the room. Claire launched into the meeting with her typical efficiency, working through agenda items with surgical precision. When she reached logistics, she turned to Ethan. Mr. Walker, you've reviewed our third quarter efficiency reports. Walk us through your findings. He'd expected to provide a brief summary. Instead, Claire wanted details. Ethan pulled up his presentation on the room's main screen and began explaining the data, how shipping route optimization could reduce costs by 18%, where warehouse automation investments would pay for themselves within 14 months, which vendor contracts were underperforming and why. 15 minutes later, he concluded with specific recommendations. The room was silent. Then Marcus Chen, the chief operations officer and technically Ethan's boss's boss, leaned forward. These projections, you're confident in these numbers? Yes, sir. I've run them multiple ways. The math holds. And you've been sitting on this analysis for how long? Ethan hesitated. About 6 months. I submitted it to my direct supervisor, but I don't think it made it past departmental review. Marcus's expression darkened. 6 months. He looked at Claire. We've been hemorrhaging money on inefficient routes for 6 months while this analysis sat in someone's inbox. Claire's face remained neutral, but her eyes had gone ice cold. That will be addressed. Mr. Walker, I want a full implementation plan on my desk by Friday. You'll report directly to Marcus for this project, coordinate with the logistics team, and move forward with Phase 1 immediately. Yes, ma'am. The meeting continued for another hour, but Ethan's mind was reeling. A direct report to the COO, Implementation Authority. This was the kind of opportunity that could change careers. As people filed out, Claire caught his eye. A moment, Mr. Walker. He waited while the room emptied. Claire closed the door, then turned to face him. 6 months, she said quietly. You had analysis that could save this company millions, and it never reached anyone with authority to act on it. I followed proper channels. I'm not criticizing you. I'm criticizing the system that buries talent under bureaucracy. She crossed her arms. How many other insights have you submitted that disappeared into the void? Ethan considered lying, then decided against it. 4 major reports in the last 2 years: process improvement, vendor consolidation, staff training protocols, and predictive maintenance modeling. 4. Claire's jaw tightened. Send them all to Patricia by end of day. I want to see what else we've been missing. Ms. Monroe, I appreciate the opportunity, but I don't want to create problems with my direct supervisor. Your direct supervisor, Claire interrupted, is about to have a very uncomfortable conversation with Marcus about why he's been sitting on reports instead of forwarding them. That's not your concern. Your concern is doing the work you're clearly capable of. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Claire's expression softened slightly. You said yesterday that people make assumptions about single parents, that they're unreliable, that they'll prioritize kids over work. Do you know what I see when I look at your record? Ethan shook his head. Someone who's been outperforming their role for 3 years while managing responsibilities that would break most people. Someone who's been invisible, not because they're unreliable, but because they're too busy executing to promote themselves. She paused. That ends now. You have real value to offer this company, Mr. Walker. I intend to make sure it's recognized. The words settled around Ethan like a weight and a gift all at once. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Now go pick up your daughter. We'll talk Friday. Ethan left the conference room in a daze. In the elevator, he checked his watch. 2:35 p.m. For the first time in 3 years, he'd have time to stop by the store on the way to Ava's school, maybe grab ingredients for a proper dinner instead of the quick pasta dishes that had become their default. The afternoon felt different, lighter. When Ava ran to meet him at pickup, practically vibrating with excitement about the volcano project, Ethan swept her into a hug that lasted longer than usual. Daddy, you're squishing me. Sorry, Bug, just happy to see you. You're being weird today. But she was grinning, her backpack bouncing as they walked toward the store. They spent an hour shopping together, Ava helping choose vegetables and debating the merits of different pasta shapes with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. At home, she sat at the kitchen counter doing homework while Ethan cooked, not just reheated, and the apartment filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes and something close to normalcy. This is really good, Daddy, Ava said through a mouthful of penne. We should do fancy dinners more. Maybe we will. After dinner, after bath time and stories and tucking her in with the usual ritual, Ethan returned to his laptop. But instead of the exhausted slog through unfinished work, he found himself energized. He pulled up the 4 reports Claire had requested, polished them, added current data, and sent them to Patricia by 9 p.m. His phone buzzed at 9:47. Claire Monroe. Received. I'm reading the predictive maintenance analysis now. This is exceptional work, Mr. Walker. Get some rest. You'll need it. Ethan stared at the message, that same unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. He typed a response. Ethan Walker. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. I appreciate the opportunity. The response came quickly. Claire Monroe. Call me Claire, at least in private. Miss Monroe makes me feel like I'm in a Victorian novel. Ethan found himself smiling at the screen, the formality of the past 3 years cracking just slightly. Ethan Walker. Only if you call me Ethan. Mr. Walker makes me feel like I'm in trouble with the principal. Claire Monroe. Deal. Good night, Ethan? Ethan Walker. Good night, Claire. He set the phone down, that crack in formality feeling both terrifying and necessary. This was his boss, his CEO, the woman who held his career in her hands. But she was also the person who'd seen him completely, who'd understood the weight he carried without needing it explained, who'd opened doors instead of closing them. The next few days blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Marcus Chen pulled Ethan into meetings with logistics teams, vendor representatives, warehouse managers. The implementation plan took shape with surprising speed, and Ethan found himself working with people several pay grades above him. His ideas not just heard but acted upon. But it was the small moments that lingered. Claire appearing in the break room while he grabbed coffee, asking casual questions about Ava's volcano project. An email at 6 p.m. asking if he'd made it home okay. A text on Wednesday night after a particularly brutal negotiation with a shipping vendor. You handled that beautifully. Don't doubt yourself. Professional, supportive. But threading through it all was something neither of them acknowledged. A current of connection that felt dangerous and inevitable. On Thursday afternoon, Ethan was deep in spreadsheet analysis when Patricia appeared at his office door. Miss Monroe needs to see you, now. The urgency in her voice sent alarm bells ringing. Ethan grabbed his phone and followed Patricia to the executive suite, his mind racing through everything that could have gone wrong. Had the logistics plan fallen apart? Had someone complained about his sudden prominence? Claire's office door was open. She stood by the windows, phone pressed to her ear, her posture rigid with tension. I understand that, Richard, but this is unacceptable. We had an agreement. Pause. No, I don't care about the circumstances. You committed to those delivery dates. Another pause, longer this time. Fine. We'll discuss this in person. Tomorrow. My office. Don't be late. She ended the call and turned, noticing Ethan for the first time. The professional mask was firmly in place, but he could see the frustration simmering beneath it. Problem? He asked. Understatement. Claire gestured to the chair across from her desk. Richard Brennan, our primary distribution partner, just informed me that he's restructuring his company. New ownership, new priorities, and apparently our contract isn't worth the paper it's printed on anymore. He's proposing rate increases that would devastate our margins. Ethan's mind immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. How much time do we have before the current contract expires? 60 days. And backup vendors? None with the capacity to handle our volume. Brennan knows it, which is why he thinks he can squeeze us. Claire sat down heavily. I'm flying to New York tomorrow to meet with him face to face. Try to salvage this before it becomes a complete disaster. What time is your flight? 6 a.m. I'll be back late tomorrow night. She rubbed her temples. I'm sorry. I didn't call you up here to unload. I actually needed your input on the Q4 projections, but those can wait until next week. Ethan hesitated, then said, I could come with you. Claire looked up sharply. What? To New York. I know Brennan's operation. I've been analyzing their performance data for the logistics report. If you're renegotiating, having someone who can speak to the numbers in real time might help. He paused. Plus, you shouldn't have to handle this alone. Something flickered across Claire's face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. You have Ava. I can call my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She watches Ava sometimes when I have evening obligations. It's short notice, but if this is important, it is. But Ethan, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. Claire studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Decision made. Okay, thank you. We'll take the company jet. Easier than commercial flights. Be at Hanscom Field by 5:30 a.m. I'll be there. Ethan left her office, already running calculations in his head. He'd need to text Mrs. Chen, pack Ava's overnight bag, prep her breakfast, leave detailed instructions. It was manageable. Barely. That evening, after explaining to Ava that he had to travel for work and she'd be having a sleepover with Mrs. Chen, Ethan found himself staring at his closet, trying to figure out what one wore on a private jet with the CEO. He settled on the same professional attire he'd wear to the office, packed an overnight bag just in case, and set 3 alarms for 4:15 a.m. Sleep was impossible. He lay in bed thinking about Richard Brennan, about contract negotiations he'd never been part of, about sitting across from Claire Monroe for hours in close quarters, about the way she'd looked at him when he'd offered to come along, like he'd surprised her, like maybe she wasn't as self-sufficient as she appeared. The alarm went off at 4:15. Ethan dressed quietly, kissed a sleeping Ava goodbye, and texted Mrs. Chen that he was leaving. The drive to Hanscom Field took 40 minutes in pre-dawn darkness, and when he pulled into the private aviation terminal, he felt completely out of his depth. A sleek white jet sat on the tarmac, stairs deployed. Claire stood at the bottom talking to the pilot, dressed in a charcoal suit with her hair pulled back. She looked every inch the powerful executive, except for the coffee cup in her hand and the faint shadows under her eyes that suggested she'd slept about as well as Ethan had. She spotted him and waved him over. Right on time. This is Captain Rodriguez. We'll be in the air in 15 minutes. The jet's interior was luxury Ethan had only seen in movies. Leather seats, polished wood, enough space to actually move around. Claire settled into a seat and immediately opened her laptop. Ethan took the seat across from her, trying not to feel like an imposter. Nervous? Claire asked without looking up. Terrified. That got her attention. She closed the laptop. Of the negotiation or the flying? Both. Neither. I don't know. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I've never done anything like this. Then let me tell you a secret. Claire leaned forward slightly. Neither had I, the first time. I was 29, newly promoted to VP, walking into a negotiation with men twice my age who thought I was someone's assistant. I was so scared I threw up in the bathroom beforehand. What did you do? I walked in there anyway. I knew my numbers, I knew our position, and I didn't let them see the fear. By the end of the meeting, they knew exactly who I was. She smiled slightly. You know your analysis better than anyone. You've done the work. Trust that. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing their departure. The jet began to taxi, and Ethan gripped the armrests as they lifted into the early morning sky. Boston fell away below them, the city lights giving way to the vast darkness of the Atlantic. Once they reached cruising altitude, Claire pulled out a thick folder. Okay, let's prep. Brennan's going to argue that his new ownership structure requires higher rates to maintain service quality. What's our counter? For the next 90 minutes, they worked through scenarios. Claire would pose a negotiation point. Ethan would provide the data to support or refute it. She was sharp, relentless, pushing him to think faster, defend his conclusions, anticipate objections. But there was also patience in how she explained strategy, how she framed leverage and timing. You're a natural at this, she said at one point. Have you ever considered moving into strategy full-time? I'm an operations manager. Strategy is above my pay grade. That's circular logic. You're good at strategy, therefore you should be in strategy. Therefore it becomes your pay grade. Claire tilted her head. Why do you do that? Diminish yourself? Ethan looked out the window at the clouds rushing past. Because if I aim too high and fail, I have a daughter who suffers for it. Better to stay in my lane and keep things stable. Or you stay in your lane and never reach your potential. Both have costs. Says the woman who became CEO before 40. Says the woman who sacrificed every personal relationship, every moment of normalcy, every chance at a life outside work to get there. Claire's voice was quiet. I'm not sure that's the example you want to follow, Ethan. He looked at her then, really looked at her. In the soft light of the cabin, without the armor of her corner office, Claire looked younger but also more tired. There was something lonely in her eyes, something that recognized the same isolation in him. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "I don't know how to regret choices I'm not sure I ever really made. The career just happened. One promotion led to another. One sacrifice enabled the next. And before I knew it, I was 42 years old running a Fortune 500 company with no one to go home to." She paused. "Do you regret focusing everything on Ava?" "No, never. She's everything." "That's the difference between us. You know what you're fighting for. I'm not sure I ever did." The confession hung in the air between them. Before Ethan could respond, the pilot announced their approach into Teterboro Airport. New York spread out below them, already alive with morning traffic. A car was waiting on the tarmac. They drove into Manhattan in relative silence, Claire reviewing notes while Ethan watched the city scroll past. The meeting with Brennan was scheduled for 10 a.m. at his offices in Midtown. Richard Brennan's conference room was all dark wood and aggressive modern art. The man himself was 60, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from decades of winning. He greeted Claire with professional warmth that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Claire, good to see you. And you brought Ethan Walker, my senior operations analyst. He'll be providing data support." Brennan's handshake was perfunctory. "Let's get to it, shall we? I'm sure you've reviewed my proposal." "I have, and I'm here to tell you it's unacceptable." For the next 2 hours, Ethan watched Claire operate at a level he'd never witnessed. She was surgical, relentless, turning every one of Brennan's arguments back on him with data Ethan provided in real time. When Brennan claimed his costs had increased, Ethan showed comparative market analysis proving otherwise. When Brennan suggested Monroe Industries had no alternatives, Claire calmly outlined the backup vendors they'd already begun conversations with. It wasn't true. They hadn't. But Brennan didn't know that. "You're bluffing," Brennan said finally. "Try me." Claire's smile was cold. "I built this company from nothing, Richard. I'm not afraid to rebuild our distribution network from scratch if that's what it takes. The question is whether you're willing to lose our business over a rate increase you don't actually need." Brennan's jaw tightened. He looked at his own team, saw the uncertainty there, and Ethan knew they'd won. "What are you proposing?" Brennan asked. "Contract renewal at current rates with performance incentives. You meet our delivery and quality metrics, you get bonuses that actually reward excellence instead of just padding your margins. You underperform, we have early termination options. Risk and reward, properly aligned." It took another hour to hammer out details, but when they left Brennan's office at 1 p.m., they had a deal that was better than the original contract. In the elevator down, Claire let out a long breath. "That was closer than I wanted it to be. You were incredible." "We were incredible. You fed me exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it." She turned to him. "Thank you, Ethan. Truly." The car took them to a quiet restaurant in the West Village. Over lunch, the first real meal either of them had eaten all day, the conversation drifted away from work. Claire asked about Ava's volcano project. Ethan asked about Claire's foster care background. The answers came easier than they should have, the boundaries between professional and personal blurring with each shared story. "Do you ever think about having kids?" Ethan asked, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "No, it's okay." Claire set down her fork. "I did once, in my early 30s. I was dating someone, a lawyer, very stable. He wanted marriage and family. I wanted CEO. We wanted different futures." She paused. "I chose the career. I told myself there would be time later, but there never was. And now I'm 42, unmarried, running a company and wondering if I optimized myself into complete isolation." "You're not isolated. You have colleagues, friends. I have employees and professional relationships. That's not the same thing." Claire met his eyes. "When was the last time someone asked me how I was doing and actually wanted to know the answer? When was the last time I went home to another person instead of an empty apartment?" Ethan didn't have an answer, because he understood exactly what she meant. He went home to Ava, yes, but to another adult who knew him, really knew him, that had died with Sarah. We're quite a pair, he said quietly. Two people who've mastered survival, but forgotten how to actually live. Is that what we're doing? Just surviving? I don't know what else to call it. Claire reached across the table, her hand covering his briefly. The touch was electric, unexpected, and over far too quickly. Maybe we're allowed to want more than survival. Maybe wanting more doesn't make us selfish or weak. The words stayed with Ethan as they returned to the airport, as the jet lifted back into the afternoon sky. They worked on the flight back, but the earlier intensity had softened into something more comfortable. At one point, exhaustion caught up with Claire and she fell asleep, her head tilted against the window. Ethan watched her sleep and felt something shift in his chest. This was dangerous territory. She was still his boss. This was still complicated. But the woman sleeping across from him wasn't the untouchable CEO of Monroe Industries. She was just Claire, brilliant and lonely and unexpectedly kind. When they landed at Hanscom Field at 7 p.m., Claire woke slowly. I fell asleep. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long day. In the parking lot, they stood by their respective cars, the evening air cold around them. Claire hesitated, then said, Would you like to grab dinner? I know you need to get back to Ava, but if Mrs. Chen can keep her a bit longer, I'd like that. Let me text her. Mrs. Chen agreed easily. They found a small Italian place near Hanscom. Nothing fancy, just good food and quiet booths. Over pasta and wine, the conversation deepened further. Claire talked about growing up in foster care, about learning to read people, to anticipate rejection, to build walls so high nothing could hurt her. Ethan talked about Sarah's diagnosis, about watching her fade while trying to keep Ava's world intact, about the guilt of moving forward when part of him still lived in that grief. Do you think she'd want you to be happy? Claire asked. Sarah? Yes. She told me as much before she died, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things. I understand that more than you know. The restaurant closed around them. They were the last customers out the door. In the parking lot, standing between their cars under the stars, Claire turned to him. Thank you for today, for coming to New York, for the negotiation support, for this. She gestured at the restaurant. I haven't had a conversation like that in years. Neither have I. We should do it again. The conversation part, I mean, not the high-stakes negotiation. Ethan smiled. I'd like that. Claire reached out, squeezed his hand once. Good night, Ethan. Hug Ava for me. Good night, Claire. He watched her drive away, then sat in his own car for a long moment before starting the engine. Something had shifted today. Something that felt inevitable and terrifying and right all at once. When he picked up Ava from Mrs. Chen's apartment, she was half asleep and full of stories about her evening. Ethan carried her home, tucked her into bed, and stood in her doorway watching her sleep. His phone buzzed. Claire Monroe. Home safe. Thank you again for everything today. You're remarkable, Ethan Walker. Ethan Walker. So are you, Claire Monroe. He sent the message before he could second-guess it, then stood there waiting for a response that felt like it might change everything. It came 30 seconds later. Claire Monroe. I'm glad you sent that wrong message. Good night. Ethan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The wrong message. The one that should have been a catastrophe. The one that had somehow opened a door neither of them had known they needed. He typed carefully. Ethan Walker. So am I. Good night, Claire. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed replaying every moment of the day. The negotiation, the lunch, the conversation that had peeled back layers he'd spent 3 years building. Claire's hand on his across the table. Her admission of loneliness. The way she'd looked at him in the parking lot like maybe he wasn't just an employee anymore. This was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. But lying there in the darkness, listening to the city hum beyond his window, Ethan couldn't bring himself to regret any of it. Friday morning arrived with Ava bouncing into his room at 6:30, demanding to know everything about his trip to New York. Ethan gave her the sanitized version over breakfast. The plane, the tall buildings, the important meeting, while his phone sat on the counter like a live wire he was afraid to touch. It buzzed at 7:15 Claire Monroe. Coffee in my office when you get in? I want to debrief yesterday before the implementation meeting at 10. Professional. Safe. Except Ethan could read the subtext now, could feel the current running beneath the words. Ethan Walker. I'll be there by 8:30. He dropped Ava at the bus stop with an extra-long hug that made her squirm and complain he was being weird again. The train ride into downtown felt different, charged with anticipation he had no right to feel. When he stepped into Claire's office at 8:30 sharp, she was standing by the window with 2 coffee cups waiting. Black? 1 sugar, she said, handing him one. Patricia told me how you take it. You asked Patricia how I take my coffee? I ask Patricia everything. She's terrifyingly efficient. Claire settled into the chair beside him, not behind her desk, but beside him, the gesture deliberate. How's Ava? Mrs. Chen said the sleepover went well. Wait, you talked to Mrs. Chen? I called her last night to thank her for making yesterday possible. She's delightful. We had a 20-minute conversation about Ava's volcano project and your apparently legendary spaghetti carbonara. Ethan stared at her. You called my neighbor? Was that overstepping? I know I can be intense. If that was too much, I apologize. No, it's not. I'm just surprised. No one's ever... He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. No one's ever cared enough to thank the people who make my life possible. No one's ever seen all the invisible support that keeps me functional. Well, I wanted her to know she helped save a critical contract negotiation, Claire said. And I wanted to know more about Ava. Mrs. Chen showed me pictures. Your daughter is beautiful, Ethan. Something warm and terrifying bloomed in Ethan's chest. Thank you. She's the best thing I've ever done. Mrs. Chen also mentioned that Ava's science fair is coming up in 3 weeks, that you usually take the day off to help her set up. I do. She gets anxious about presenting in front of people. I like to be there. Claire was quiet for a moment, her coffee cup cradled in both hands. Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to come? Ethan's heart stopped. To Ava's science fair? I know it's crossing lines. I know I'm her father's boss, and this whole thing is already complicated enough. But I'd like to meet her, Ethan, properly, not just in pictures. Claire met his eyes. I'd like to be part of your life, the real parts, not just the professional ones. The honesty of it was staggering. Ethan set down his coffee cup carefully, buying time to organize thoughts that were spinning out of control. Claire, I need you to understand something. Ava is my world. I don't introduce her to people casually. I don't bring complications into her life unless I'm certain they're worth it. I know. And this, whatever this is between us, it's my job, my career, everything I've built. If it goes wrong, I don't just lose you. I lose stability, security, the ability to provide for my daughter. I know that too. So I need to know what you want, not as my boss, as Claire. What do you want from me? Claire set down her own cup and turned to face him fully. The truth? I don't know yet. I haven't allowed myself to want anything personal in so long I'm not sure I remember how. But I know that talking to you feels different than talking to anyone else. I know that you see me, really see me, and that terrifies me and feels necessary all at once. I know that when you offered to come to New York, it was the first time in years someone showed up for me instead of the other way around. She paused, her voice dropping lower. And I know that I've been alone for a very long time, Ethan. By choice, yes, but alone nonetheless. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of optimization and efficiency and treating my life like a quarterly report. I want messiness. I want complications. I want to go to a 7-year-old's science fair because her father matters to me. Ethan's throat tightened. You matter to me too. That's what scares me. We can go slow. We can be careful. But I need you to know that I'm not just your boss anymore. I can't be. Not after yesterday. No, Ethan agreed quietly. You can't be. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility and risk. Finally, Ethan said, The science fair is 3 weeks from today, 2 p.m. in the gymnasium. Ava's doing a presentation on volcanic eruption patterns. Claire's smile was like sunrise. I'll be there. And Claire? She doesn't know about you yet. About us. About any of this. I need to prepare her first. Of course, so whatever you need. The implementation meeting at 10 was surreal. Ethan sat in the conference room presenting logistics strategies while acutely aware of Claire at the head of the table, professional and commanding, giving no indication that an hour ago they'd been discussing science fairs and what they meant to each other. It was a masterclass in compartmentalization, and Ethan followed her lead. But when the meeting ended and people filed out, Claire caught his eye across the room. Just for a second. Just long enough for him to see the warmth there, the connection that couldn't be hidden completely. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a strange double life. At work, Ethan and Claire maintained strict professionalism. She was the CEO. He was the operations manager leading a critical implementation. They had meetings, exchanged emails, collaborated on strategy with perfect corporate distance. But in the margins, something else grew. Coffee in her office became a morning ritual, ostensibly to discuss project updates, but often wandering into territory that had nothing to do with work. Claire started leaving earlier, a shocking development that had Patricia practically in tears of joy to call Ethan on his commute home. They'd talk while he cooked dinner, while she sat in her empty apartment, conversations that ranged from mundane daily details to deeper confessions about loneliness and loss, and the weight of choices made years ago. Ethan told Ava about Claire carefully, incrementally. First as his boss, who'd been nice to him. Then as someone who might come to the science fair. Then, when Ava asked why his boss would care about volcanoes, as someone who was becoming his friend. Like Maya is my friend? Ava asked over dinner one night. Sort of, but for grown-ups. Does she like spaghetti? I don't know. Maybe we can find out sometime. Ava considered this seriously. Okay, but only if she promises to say nice things about my volcano. I worked really hard on it. I'm sure she will, Bug. The day of the science fair arrived with Ethan's nerves stretched tight. He'd taken the afternoon off, helped Ava set up her display board with its carefully drawn diagrams and printed research. She'd built a model volcano out of paper mache that they'd spent 2 weekends perfecting, and the pride on her face when she arranged it on the table made Ethan's chest ache. It looks amazing, Ava. You should be so proud. Do you think people will like it? I think they're going to love it. The gymnasium filled with parents and students, the air thick with excited chatter, and the faint smell of baking soda from a dozen chemical reactions. Ethan stood beside Ava's table, one hand on her shoulder while she fidgeted with her notes. He checked his phone. 2:15 p.m. Maybe Claire had changed her mind. Maybe she'd realized how complicated this was. Ethan, he turned. Claire stood 3 feet away, dressed down in slacks and a simple blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked younger, softer, and completely out of place among the casual parent crowd. In her hands, she carried a small bouquet of flowers. Claire, you came. I said I would. She turned to Ava, crouching slightly to meet the girl at eye level. You must be Ava. Your dad has told me so much about you. I'm Claire. Ava studied her with the unflinching directness only children possessed. You're my dad's boss. I am, but today I'm just Claire, here to see your volcano. Is that okay? I guess so. Ava glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. Do you know about tectonic plates? A little. Why don't you teach me? What followed was 15 minutes of Ava explaining her project with growing confidence while Claire listened with genuine interest, asking questions that proved she was actually paying attention. Ethan watched from the side, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Claire wasn't performing interest. She wasn't doing this for him. She was connecting with his daughter as a person, respecting Ava's intelligence and enthusiasm. When Ava demonstrated the eruption, vinegar and baking soda foaming dramatically over the model's sides, Claire applauded with delight. That was incredible! You built this yourself? Dad helped with the structure, but I did all the painting and the research. Well, it's brilliant, truly. Claire handed her the flowers. These are for you, for all your hard work. Ava's eyes went wide. For me? For you. Nobody ever brought me flowers before. Ava clutched them carefully, looking up at Ethan. Can we put them in water when we get home? Absolutely. Other parents and students began drifting over, and Claire stepped back to give Ava space. She moved to stand beside Ethan, their shoulders almost touching. She's wonderful, Claire said quietly. She is. Thank you for coming. It means, Ethan's voice caught. It means everything. I wouldn't have missed it. They stood together watching Ava explain volcanic patterns to a cluster of impressed classmates, and Ethan felt something settle into place. This wasn't just about attraction or connection between two lonely adults. This was about Claire choosing to show up for the most important person in his life. This was about her seeing his world completely and wanting to be part of it. When the science fair ended and they helped Ava pack up her display, Claire walked them to Ethan's car. Ava chattered the entire way, high on success and the novelty of flowers from a grown-up who wasn't family. Claire, do you want to have dinner with us? The invitation tumbled out of Ava before Ethan could prepare for it. Dad makes really good spaghetti. Claire looked at Ethan, question in her eyes. He could see her giving him an out, ready to decline gracefully if this was too much too fast. But Ethan found himself nodding. You're welcome to join us, if you're free. I'd love to. The drive back to his apartment felt surreal. Claire followed in her own car, and when they arrived at his modest building in South Boston, Ethan saw it through her eyes. The worn lobby, the narrow stairs, the apartment that was clean and loved, but undeniably small compared to what she was probably used to. But Claire stepped inside and smiled. This is lovely. So much warmer than my place. You can sit there, Ava said, pointing to the couch. I need to put my flowers in water and then I'll show you my room, okay? I'd be honored. While Ava rummaged in the kitchen for a vase, Ethan started pulling ingredients for dinner. Claire appeared at his elbow. Can I help? You're a guest. I'd like to help. Please. So they cooked together in his tiny kitchen, a domestic intimacy that felt both natural and momentous. Claire chopped vegetables while Ethan started the sauce, their movements synchronized in the small space. Ava appeared periodically to drag Claire away to see her room, her books, her collection of rocks from the beach, and each time Claire went willingly, engaging with Ava's 7-year-old enthusiasms without condescension. Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Ava told stories about school, Claire asked questions that made Ava feel heard, and Ethan watched the two most important people in his current life connect across plates of pasta. When Ava accidentally spilled her water and Claire helped clean it up without missing a beat, something in Ethan's chest cracked open. After dinner, while Ava brushed her teeth, Claire helped Ethan clean up. She's really something, Claire said, drying dishes. Smart, creative, so full of joy. You're doing an incredible job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Most days I feel that way about running a Fortune 500 company. I think it's just called being human. Claire set down the towel. Thank you for letting me into this. Into your home, your life with Ava. I know it's not a small thing. No, it's not. Ethan turned to face her fully. But I want you here, Claire. I'm done pretending I don't. I want to be here too. She reached out, her hand finding his. We still need to be careful. Navigate this thoughtfully. But I'm in, Ethan. Whatever this is, I'm in. Daddy? Ava's voice called from the bathroom. Can Claire read me a story? Ethan and Claire looked at each other, the moment charged with significance. He called back, Is that okay with Claire? I'd be honored, Claire said again. They found Ava already in bed, her stuffed elephant tucked beside her and 3 books carefully selected on the nightstand. Claire sat on the edge of the bed while Ethan stood in the doorway, watching this woman he'd known for 3 years and was only now really seeing red where the wild things are, to his daughter. Ava fell asleep before the story ended, her breathing evening out into the peaceful rhythm of childhood. Claire set the book down gently, tucked the blanket around Ava's shoulders with surprising tenderness, and followed Ethan out of the room. In the living room, the night suddenly felt full of possibility and uncertainty. Claire gathered her bag, clearly preparing to leave, but hesitated. I should go. It's getting late. Or you could stay, just to talk. I'll make coffee. Claire's smile was soft. I'd like that. They sat on his worn couch with coffee neither of them really wanted, the city lights visible through the window. The conversation wandered through territory they'd been circling for weeks. Childhood, loss, the paths that had led them to this unlikely intersection. My last foster family was the Monroes, Claire said. I was 16. They were older, kind, couldn't have children of their own. They gave me stability, helped me apply to colleges, taught me it was okay to want things. When I graduated from business school, they were in the front row. They died within 6 months of each other when I was 35. She stared into her coffee. I threw myself into work after that. It was easier than grief. I understand that more than you know. Tell me about Sarah if you want to. Ethan did. He talked about meeting her in college, about her laugh and her stubbornness and the way she'd made him believe in futures he'd never imagined, about the pregnancy that surprised them both but felt right, about the diagnosis that came when Ava was 4, the brutal 18 months that followed, the morning he'd woken up to find Sarah gone and Ava needing breakfast and somehow having to figure out how to be both parents at once. She told me before she died that she wanted me to be happy again, Ethan said, that loving someone new wouldn't be betraying her. But I never thought I'd actually want to, until now. Claire's hand found his in the space between them. I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of wanting this and having it fall apart. I'm scared of hurting you or Ava. I'm scared I don't know how to be what you need because I've spent so long being untouchable. I'm scared too, but maybe we're allowed to be scared and do it anyway. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between changing diapers at 3 a.m. and learning to braid hair from YouTube videos. Claire laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Then her expression turned serious. We need to set boundaries. At work, we stay professional. No one can know about this yet. Not because I'm ashamed, but because the complications could hurt both our careers. We need to protect that. Agreed. And with Ava, we go slow. She's already lost one parent. I can't introduce instability into her life. Of course. Slow is good. Slow is smart. Claire paused. Though I have to admit, having dinner with you both tonight didn't feel slow. It felt right. It did, didn't it? They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment. Then Claire checked her watch and sighed. I really should go. Some of us have early morning meetings with the board. Some of us have to make volcano-shaped lunches for excited 7-year-olds. At the door, Claire turned back. Can I see you this weekend without work as an excuse? I'd like that. Ava has a playdate Saturday afternoon. I'll be free from 2 to 5. I'll pick you up at 2:15. Dress casual. I have an idea. Should I be worried? Probably. Claire leaned in, kissed his cheek softly. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Claire. He watched her walk to her car, watched her drive away, then closed the door and leaned against it. His phone buzzed immediately. Claire Monroe. Thank you for tonight. For Ava, for dinner, for trusting me with something so precious. I won't take it for granted. Ethan Walker. Thank you for showing up, for all of it. See you Saturday. Claire Monroe. Can't wait. Ethan checked on Ava one more time, still sleeping peacefully, the flowers from Claire visible on her nightstand, then returned to the living room. The apartment felt different now, like it had expanded to hold something new, something that felt dangerous and inevitable and exactly right. Saturday arrived with Ava bouncing with excitement about her playdate with Maya. Ethan dropped her off at noon, then returned home to shower and change, his nerves jangling with anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Claire picked him up at exactly 2:15 in a car that was significantly less flashy than he'd expected, a practical SUV, not the executive sedan he'd imagined. Where are we going? He asked as she pulled away from the curb. You'll see. Trust me? Against my better judgment, yes. They drove north out of the city, the conversation easy and wandering. After 40 minutes, Claire pulled into a state park Ethan had never visited. She grabbed a backpack from the trunk and gestured toward a hiking trail. You brought me hiking? I brought you to a place where we can talk without walls or expectations, where we're just two people walking in the woods. Is that okay? It's perfect. The trail wound through pine forest, the afternoon sun filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. They walked side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. Claire told him about her morning runs, about how moving her body was the only time her brain truly quieted. Ethan told her about the walks with Ava, about teaching her to identify birds and trees, about Sarah's love of nature and how he tried to keep that alive for their daughter. An hour in, they reached a clearing with a view over a small lake. Claire spread a blanket from her backpack and pulled out sandwiches, fruit, water bottles. You packed a picnic. I'm full of surprises. She settled onto the blanket, patting the space beside her. Come here. Ethan sat, hyper-aware of her proximity, of the warmth of her shoulder against his. They ate in companionable silence, watching the lake shimmer in the afternoon light. Can I ask you something? Claire said eventually. Always. What do you want from this? From us? I know we're being careful, taking it slow, but if there were no obstacles, if it was just about what you wanted, what would that look like? Ethan considered the question carefully. Honestly, I want someone who sees all of me. Not just the father, not just the employee, but the whole complicated mess. I want someone who understands that Ava comes first but doesn't resent that. I want partnership, Claire. Someone who shows up. Someone I can show up for. I want to stop being so goddamn lonely. I want that too. Claire's voice was quiet. I want to come home to something other than silence. I want someone who challenges me, who isn't intimidated by what I do or who I am. I want to matter to someone beyond my professional value. And I want, she paused, I want to be part of a family again, even if it's not traditional, even if it's complicated. We are complicated. Yes, but maybe we're the right kind of complicated. Ethan turned to look at her fully. The professional armor was completely gone. This was just Claire, vulnerable and hopeful and scared in equal measure. He reached out, his hand cupping her face gently. Can I kiss you? He asked. I thought you'd never ask. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them careful with something that felt fragile and important. Then Claire's hand slid into his hair, and Ethan pulled her closer, and careful dissolved into something deeper. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Claire rested her forehead against his. We're really doing this, she whispered. Yeah, we really are. They stayed at the lake until the sun started its descent, talking about logistics and boundaries and how to navigate the impossible situation they'd chosen. By the time they hiked back to the car, they had a plan. Keep work and personal life completely separate. Tell no one at Monroe Industries yet. Introduce Claire into Ava's life gradually. Move forward with honesty and care. Claire dropped him off at 5 with one more kiss that left Ethan dizzy. Same time next week? She asked. I'll bring the sandwiches. Deal. He picked up Ava at 6, listened to her excited chatter about the play date, made dinner while she drew pictures at the kitchen table. When he tucked her in that night, Ava said, I like Claire, Daddy. She's nice. I like her too, Bug. Oh, is she going to be your friend like Mommy was your friend? The question caught Ethan off guard. He sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. I don't know yet, sweetheart. Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Ava thought about it seriously. I think Mommy would want you to have friends. She told me once that love grows bigger when you share it, like how I love you and I love Maya, and it doesn't make either love smaller. Ethan's eyes stung. You're very wise, you know that? I know. Ava yawned, settling deeper into her pillow. Just make sure Claire knows about volcanoes. That's important. I'll make sure. After Ava fell asleep, Ethan sat on the couch with his phone, staring at Claire's last message. The complications were real. The risks were real. But so was the feeling in his chest, the sense that maybe, after 3 years of just surviving, he was finally allowed to live again. He typed carefully. Ethan Walker. Ava approves. Says you need to know about volcanoes, though. Apparently that's critical. The response came quickly. Claire Monroe. I'll start studying immediately. Can't disappoint my toughest critic. How are you feeling about today? Ethan Walker. Terrified. Happy. Like I'm standing at the edge of something I can't see the bottom of. Claire Monroe. Same. But I'm glad we're jumping together. Ethan Walker. Me too. Good night, Claire. Claire Monroe. Good night, Ethan. Sweet dreams. He set the phone down, those words echoing in his mind, sweet dreams. The same words that had started all of this with a misdirected message. Except now they meant something entirely different. Now they meant possibility and hope. And the terrifying, beautiful prospect of letting someone in. Ethan checked on Ava one last time, then returned to his room. Sleep came easier than it had in weeks, and when he dreamed, it was of Claire's hand in his, and Ava's laughter and futures that felt possible instead of just survivable. The wrong message had been right all along. He just hadn't known it yet. The next 6 weeks unfolded in a careful dance between concealment and revelation. At Monroe Industries, Ethan and Claire maintained flawless professionalism. They had meetings, exchanged emails, collaborated on the logistics implementation that was saving the company millions. To everyone else, they were CEO and operations manager, nothing more. But in the spaces between, the early morning coffees in her office before anyone else arrived, the texts that came late at night, the Saturday afternoons when Ava was at playdates, they built something neither had expected to find. Claire became a regular presence in Ethan's life, integrated so gradually that Ava accepted her like she'd always been there. Movie nights where Claire sat on the floor with Ava building elaborate pillow forts. Sunday morning pancakes where Claire proved surprisingly terrible at flipping and Ava found this hilarious. Homework sessions where Claire helped with math problems while Ethan cooked dinner. The three of them falling into rhythms that felt like family even though no one said the word out loud. But Sarah's presence lingered in the apartment like a gentle ghost. Her photograph still sat on the mantel. Ava still talked about her mother with the casual ease of a child who'd integrated loss into her understanding of the world. And Ethan still wore his wedding ring, though he'd started turning it absently on his finger, feeling the weight of it differently now. The calendar on his phone held a date he'd been dreading since Claire entered his life, November 7th, 3 years since Sarah died. He hadn't told Claire about it, couldn't quite bring himself to explain that he'd need to be alone that day, that he had a ritual of taking Ava to Sarah's favorite park and telling stories about her mother until his daughter fell asleep exhausted from remembering. But Claire noticed everything. 2 days before the anniversary, she appeared at his office door at 6 p.m. after most people had left for the day. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. Ethan gestured her in. Claire closed the door and sat across from his desk, her expression careful. "November 7th. You have the day marked as personal leave in your calendar. Patricia mentioned it when I was trying to schedule a meeting." She paused. "It's the anniversary, isn't it?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Yeah. 3 years. What do you usually do?" "Take Ava to the park. Tell her stories about Sarah. Try to make sure she doesn't forget her mother while also not drowning in the grief of it." He rubbed his face. "It's complicated." "I'm sure it is." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to be alone? Both of you, I mean. I can step back, give you space." "No, I don't want you to step back." The words came out more vehement than Ethan intended. "I just don't know how to navigate this. How to honor Sarah's memory while also moving forward with you. How to explain to Ava that Daddy's new friend is becoming something more when I'm not sure I've let go of her mother yet." Claire moved around the desk, perching on the edge beside him. "Ethan, you don't have to let go of Sarah to make room for me. Love isn't finite. Grief doesn't have an expiration date. And I would never ask you to forget her or pretend she didn't matter. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally..." He stopped, struggling for words. "I still wear my wedding ring, Claire. I still sometimes reach for my phone to text her about something Ava did before I remember she's gone. I still hear her voice telling me to be happy, to find someone, and I feel guilty for actually doing it." "What if I came with you?" Claire asked softly. "To the park. Not to intrude on your time with Ava, but to be there, to honor Sarah too. She was Ava's mother. She made you who you are. She's part of your story. I'd like to acknowledge that." Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd somehow understood exactly what he needed before he knew himself. "You'd do that?" "Of course I would, if you want me there." "I do." The admission felt like opening a locked door. "I really do." November 7th dawned gray and cold, the kind of Boston morning that matched the weight in Ethan's chest. He helped Ava pick out her favorite purple jacket, the one Sarah had bought her 2 months before the end. They met Claire at the entrance to the public garden, and Ava ran to hug her immediately. "Claire, Daddy said you're coming to remember Mommy with us." "I am, if that's okay with you." "It's okay. Mommy would like you. She always said Daddy needed someone who was smart and didn't let him be too serious all the time." Claire's eyes met Ethan's over Ava's head, something profound passing between them. They walked together through the park, past the swan boats and the bridge where Ethan had proposed to Sarah 9 years ago. They found their usual bench by the pond, and Ava climbed into Ethan's lap like she always did on this day. Tell me about when you met Mommy, Ava said. The ritual question, asked every year. Ethan told the story, college library, arguing over the last copy of a book they both needed, Sarah's laugh when she suggested they share it, and get coffee to discuss. He told about their first date, their first apartment. The morning Sarah told him she was pregnant, and they'd both cried with joy and terror. Claire listened quietly, her hand finding Ethan's free one and squeezing gently. Then Ava turned to Claire. Did you know my mommy? I didn't have that privilege, sweetie, but I know she must have been wonderful because she raised you for 4 years and clearly did an amazing job. And she chose your daddy, which means she had excellent taste. Ava giggled. Ava, Daddy, can we tell Claire about the pancake incident? The pancake incident is classified information. Please? Mommy would think it's funny. So Ethan told about Sarah's disastrous attempt at making shaped pancakes for Ava's 3rd birthday, how they'd ended up ordering pizza at 9 a.m. because everything had burned, how Sarah had laughed so hard she'd cried. Claire laughed too, and Ava joined in, and somehow the grief that usually sat heavy on this day felt lighter, shared among 3 people instead of 2. After an hour, Ava wanted to play on the nearby playground. She ran ahead, and Ethan and Claire sat together on the bench watching her climb the jungle gym. Thank you, Ethan said quietly, for being here, for understanding. Thank you for letting me be here. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. She really was remarkable, wasn't she, Sarah, I mean. I can see her in Ava, in the way you talk about her. She was. And I loved her. I still love her in the way you love people who shaped you. I know. And that's okay, Ethan. I'm not threatened by your past. I'm honored you're letting me be part of your present. He turned to kiss her temple. I want you to be part of my future, too. The words hung in the air, heavier than he'd intended. Claire lifted her head to look at him. Are you sure? Because that's not a small thing. That's introducing me to Ava as more than your friend. That's telling people at work. That's making this real in ways we've been avoiding. I'm terrified, Ethan admitted, but I'm sure. I don't want to hide anymore, Claire. I don't want to compartmentalize you into stolen moments and secret weekends. I want Ava to know that Daddy found someone who makes him happy. I want to stop pretending at work that you're just my boss. I want all of it, complications and all. Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want that too. But we need to do this right, for Ava first. She needs to understand what this means. Tonight. I'll talk to her tonight. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, the 3 of them. When evening came and Claire said goodbye, Ava hugged her extra tight. Will you come over tomorrow too? If your dad says it's okay. It's very okay, Ethan said. After Ava's bath and stories, after she was tucked in with her elephant, Ethan sat on the edge of her bed instead of leaving. Bug, can we talk about something important? Ava sat up, suddenly serious. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart. Nothing like that. I want to talk to you about Claire. I like Claire. I like her too. A lot. More than just as a friend. Ethan took a breath. You know how Mommy and I loved each other? How we were married and had you? Yeah. Well, sometimes when people's husbands or wives die, they can find someone else to love. Not to replace the person who died, but to have new love with. Like how you love me and you loved Mommy. And both of those are real, even though they're different. Ava's face scrunched up in thought. You love Claire like you loved Mommy? Not exactly the same. Every love is different, but yes, I love Claire. And I want her to be a bigger part of our lives if that's okay with you. Will she live here? Not right away. We'll take it slow. But maybe someday, if things keep going well. Will she be my new mom? The question hit Ethan hard. No one will ever replace your mommy, Ava. Ever. Claire would be someone different. Someone who loves you and takes care of you, but in her own way. You'd have had a mommy who you'll always remember, and you'd have Claire who's here now. Does that make sense? Ava was quiet for a long time. Then she said, when Mommy was sick, she told me something. She said that love is the biggest thing, and that Daddy would need someone to share love with besides just me. She said when that happened, I should be happy because it means there's more love in the world. Ethan's vision blurred. She said that to you? Yeah, I didn't really understand it then, but I think I do now. Ava reached out to hug him. I want you to have more love, Daddy. And Claire is nice and she knows about volcanoes and she makes you smile different. It's okay. You're amazing. You know that. I know. She yawned. Can Claire come to my birthday party next month? She'd love that. Good. Now I'm sleepy. Ethan tucked her back in, kissed her forehead, and stood in her doorway for a long moment watching her drift off. Then he went to the living room and called Claire. How did it go? She asked immediately. She's okay with it. More than okay. She actually gave me permission to be happy. Oh, Ethan. Sarah talked to her before she died, told her I'd find someone, told her to be happy about it. His voice broke. I've been so worried about betraying Sarah's memory, and she literally gave us her blessing 3 years ago. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was, and I think she'd really like you. I hope so. Claire paused. So what happens now? Now we stop hiding. We tell HR tomorrow, navigate whatever policies we need to. We let people know, and we figure out how to actually be together in the real world with all the complications that brings. I'm ready if you are. I'm ready. Terrified, but ready. The next morning, Ethan and Claire met with HR before anyone else arrived at the office. Martha Hendricks, the head of human resources, listened to their situation with professional neutrality, then consulted policy documents for 15 minutes before speaking. Technically, this is a conflict of interest given the reporting structure. Mr. Walker reports to Marcus Chen, who reports to Ms. Monroe. We'd need to adjust that to maintain proper boundaries. She looked at Claire. The board will need to be informed, and will need to ensure there's no perception of favoritism in Ethan's promotions or compensation. Understood, Claire said. I want this handled correctly. I won't risk the company or Ethan's reputation. Then here's what I propose. Ethan's reporting structure shifts to report directly to the board liaison for operations oversight. That removes you from his chain of command, Ms. Monroe. Any future promotions or salary adjustments go through the standard committee review process, and you both sign acknowledgement forms about maintaining professional boundaries at work. That's acceptable, Ethan said. Good. I'll draft the paperwork and schedule a brief meeting with the board chair. This will be in your files, but we'll keep it confidential beyond those who need to know professionally. What you share with colleagues is your decision. They left HR with the situation officially documented and appropriate boundaries established. Walking back to the elevator, Claire caught Ethan's hand briefly. No turning back now. Good. I don't want to turn back. Word spread through Monroe Industries with the speed of corporate gossip, though whether through intentional sharing or simple observation, Ethan couldn't be sure. People started noticing the way Claire smiled when Ethan entered a meeting, the way Ethan's schedule now occasionally included notations like family commitment that Patricia protected fiercely. Marcus Chen pulled Ethan aside one afternoon with a knowing look. The CEO, Walker? Aim high, I'll give you that. It's not like that. I'm teasing. You're both adults, HR knows, and honestly, it's about time Claire had something in her life besides quarterly reports. Just don't let it affect the logistics implementation. We're still on deadline. Yes, sir. But mostly, people were kind. Colleagues who'd worked with Ethan for years congratulated him quietly. The few who'd seen Claire's walls come down seemed genuinely happy for her. And if there were whispers about inappropriateness or power dynamics, they stayed whispers, drowned out by the evidence of two people simply trying to build something real. The first time Claire stayed over was accidental. It was a Thursday evening, and she'd come for dinner as had become routine. Ava fell asleep on the couch between them during a movie, and when they tried to move her to bed, she'd mumbled, "Both of you tuck me in," without fully waking. So they did, together. Standing on opposite sides of Ava's bed, arranging her blankets in the specific way she liked, sharing the ritual that felt sacred and significant. I should go, Claire whispered after they'd closed Ava's door. Or you could stay, not like just to sleep, if you want. Claire looked at him in the dim hallway light. Are you sure? I'm sure. She stayed. They fell asleep on opposite sides of Ethan's bed. careful distance between them. But when Ethan woke at 2 a.m., Claire had migrated closer, her head on his shoulder, her breathing soft and even. He lay there in the darkness, this woman in his bed, his daughter asleep down the hall, and felt something like peace settle over him for the first time in 3 years. Ava found them in the morning, still tangled together, and her only comment was, "Does Claire want pancakes too?" "Definitely," Claire said, her voice sleep rough and beautiful. November bled into December. Ava's 8th birthday approached, and she insisted on inviting Claire to the party with the same certainty she insisted on a chocolate cake with strawberry frosting. The party was chaos, 8-year-olds, sugar, and presents creating a whirlwind in their small apartment, but Claire dove in without hesitation. She helped organize games, cleaned up spills, and at one point ended up with frosting in her hair that Ava found absolutely hilarious. Watching her laugh with his daughter, completely unself-conscious and present, Ethan felt the last piece of his careful compartmentalization crumble. This wasn't his boss. This wasn't the CEO of Monroe Industries. This was Claire, the woman who'd shown up for him, who'd honored his past while building his future, who'd somehow become essential to both his life and Ava's. That night, after the last guest had left and Ava was asleep surrounded by new toys, Ethan and Claire cleaned up together. "Thank you," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she washed dishes. "For being here. For being you." Claire leaned back against him. "Where else would I want to be? I don't know, fancy restaurants, galas, places that don't involve 8-year-olds and frosting fights. I've done all that. It's lonely and exhausting and completely hollow." She turned in his arms to face him. This is real. This matters. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love you." The words came out before Ethan could second-guess them. "I love you, Claire. I know it's complicated and messy and there are still things we're figuring out, but I love you." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. I have for weeks now. I just didn't know if I was allowed to say it. You're allowed. You're allowed to say it and feel it and be here. All of it." They kissed in his tiny kitchen surrounded by birthday debris, and it felt like promises neither of them had expected to make. When they finally broke apart, Claire whispered against his lips, "I want to talk about the future, our future, what it could look like." "Okay, let's talk." They moved to the couch, Claire tucked against Ethan's side. She spoke first. "My lease is up in February. I was thinking about buying a place, something bigger than my current apartment. Somewhere with space for an office and a guest room and maybe—" She paused. "Maybe space for a family, if that's something we want." Ethan's heart rate picked up. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I'm asking if you and Ava would consider moving in with me. Not immediately, not rushed, but as something we work toward. A home for all of us." "That's a big step." "I know, and if it's too fast, we can wait. But Ethan, I'm 42 years old. I don't want to waste time being cautious when I know what I want, and I want this. I want you and Ava and the chaos and the pancakes and coming home to people I love instead of silence." Ethan thought about his apartment, about the memories it held of those first dark years after Sarah died, about how it had been a shelter but maybe not really a home, about Ava growing up in one bedroom when she deserved space to spread out, to have friends over without everyone being on top of each other. "Can we ask Ava?" he said finally. "Because if we do this, she needs to be part of the decision." "Of course." They talked to Ava the next morning over the birthday leftover pancakes, explained that Claire was thinking about a new house, that maybe they could all live there together, that it would mean Ava having her own bigger room and a backyard and space for all 3 of them. Ava listened seriously, asked practical questions about where it would be and whether she'd change schools and if she could bring all her stuffed animals. Then she said, "Would Claire be there every day? Like a real family?" "Yes," Claire said, "like a real family." "And you promise you're not going to leave?" The question gutted them both. Claire knelt down to Ava's level. "Sweetheart, I can't promise that nothing will ever change because life is unpredictable. But I can promise that I love you and your dad, and I'm choosing to be here because I want to be. Not because I have to, but because you both make my life better and happier and fuller than I ever thought possible." Ava studied her for a long moment. Then she threw her arms around Claire's neck. "Okay, but I get to help pick my room. Deal." December passed in a blur of house hunting and holidays. They found a place in Brookline, old Victorian with good bones, a yard, enough space for everyone to breathe. Claire made an offer that was accepted before New Year's. They'd close in February, have time to renovate, move in by April. At work, the logistics implementation wrapped successfully, saving Monroe Industries millions, just as Ethan's analysis had predicted. The board approved his promotion to Director of Operations Strategy, the title coming with a significant raise and expanded responsibilities. When they announced it, no one suggested it was because of Claire. The work spoke for itself. On Christmas Eve, the three of them decorated Claire's future house, their future house, together. They'd hung lights and played music and laughed when Ava insisted on putting the star on a tree that was 3 feet taller than her. When Ava fell asleep on a pile of drop cloths, exhausted and happy, Ethan and Claire stood in the empty living room holding each other. "This is really happening," Claire whispered. "We're really doing this." Getting scared? Terrified. But in a good way. In a "this is the most important thing I've ever done" way. "Me too." Ethan pulled back to look at her. "I never thought I'd have this again. A partner, a future that felt like more than just surviving. You gave me that back." "You gave it to me for the first time," Claire countered. "Everything before was just achievement. This is actually living." They stood there in their future home, their sleeping daughter nearby, and felt the weight of what they were building. It wasn't simple. It wasn't uncomplicated. But it was theirs. On Christmas morning, Ava woke them at 6 a.m., demanding they open presents. They'd agreed to spend the day at Ethan's apartment one last time, a quiet celebration for the three of them. Ava tore through gifts with typical 8-year-old enthusiasm, while Ethan and Claire watched from the couch, coffee in hand. Then Ava handed Claire a small wrapped box. "This one's for you, for me and Daddy." Claire opened it carefully. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with 3 charms, a volcano, a heart, and a tiny house. Her eyes filled with tears. "Ava helped me pick them out," Ethan said quietly. "The volcano for how we met, the heart for what we built, and the house for where we're going. It's perfect. Thank you both." Claire slipped it on, the charms catching the morning light. "Now Claire's turn," Ava announced. "She has something for Daddy, too." Claire pulled out an envelope, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to Ethan. He opened it to find a photograph. The 3 of them from Ava's birthday party, frosting covered and laughing, looking exactly like what they were becoming. Beneath it was a note in Claire's precise handwriting. "For the man who taught me that love isn't a mistake, even when it arrives unexpectedly, especially then. All my love, C." Ethan pulled her close, kissed her softly, then turned to include Ava in the hug. They stayed like that for a long moment, 3 people who'd found each other through accidents and courage and the willingness to believe in second chances. "Merry Christmas," Claire whispered. "Merry Christmas," Ethan and Ava echoed. Outside, snow began to fall over Boston, covering the city in quiet white. Inside the small apartment that had sheltered them through grief and rebuilding, a family celebrated their first holiday together and looked toward a future that felt bright and possible and earned through every complicated, beautiful step that had brought them here. The wrong message had been right all along. It just took them a while to understand that love doesn't arrive on schedule or follow plans. It shows up in unexpected moments, in misdirected texts and science fairs, and the courage to choose connection over isolation. And when it does, you hold on tight and build something worth keeping. The snow continued falling through Christmas night, blanketing Boston in that peculiar quiet that only winter could bring. Ethan stood at his apartment window long after Ava and Claire had fallen asleep, watching the city transform into something clean and new. The bracelet on Claire's wrist had caught the light as she drifted off on the couch, those 3 small charms representing everything they'd built from a single mistake. He should have felt nothing but contentment. Instead, a knot of anxiety had settled in his chest, growing tighter with each passing hour, because loving Claire, really loving her, building a life with her, meant facing the one thing he'd been avoiding since the day they'd kissed by the lake. His wedding ring still circled his finger, a weight he'd carried for 8 years. Sarah's ring, the physical symbol of a love that had ended not by choice, but by cruel biology. Taking it off felt like betrayal. Keeping it on felt like holding Claire at arm's length, no matter how close she stood. The new year arrived with typical Boston fanfare. Ethan took Ava to watch fireworks over the harbor while Claire worked late, a board meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. When he tucked Ava into bed that night, she asked the question that had clearly been building for days. "Daddy, when we move to the new house, will you and Claire get married like you and Mommy were?" Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, caught completely off guard. "That's a pretty big question, Bug. Maya's parents got married and she got to be in the wedding and wear a fancy dress. I think I'd look good in a fancy dress." "You'd look beautiful in a fancy dress." He smoothed her hair back. "But Claire and I haven't talked about marriage yet. We're still figuring things out." "But you love her, right? And she loves us?" "Yes to both." "Then what's there to figure out?" Ava's 8-year-old logic was devastatingly simple. If people love each other, they get married. That's how it works. "It's a little more complicated than that, sweetheart." "Why?" Ethan struggled for an answer that would make sense to a child who'd lost her mother but still believed in fairy tale endings. Because grown-up love is messy sometimes. There are feelings and histories and promises we made to other people that we have to figure out how to honor while also moving forward. Ava was quiet for a moment, then reached out to touch the ring on his left hand. "Is it because of Mommy's ring?" The observation was so acute, so painfully perceptive, that Ethan felt his throat close. "Partly, yeah. Mommy told me once that rings are just symbols, that the real love is in here." She tapped his chest. "She said even when she was gone, you'd always love her in there, and that was more important than any ring." "She told you that?" "The day before she went to the hospital the last time. She wanted me to know it was okay to love other people too. That love doesn't run out." Ava yawned, her eyes already drooping. "I think she'd want you to give Claire a ring too, a new one. That doesn't make Mommy's ring less special." Ethan kissed her forehead, his eyes stinging. "When did you get so wise?" "I was born this way," she mumbled, already half asleep. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Bug. Sweet dreams." He closed her door and stood in the hallway for a long moment, Sarah's ring heavy on his finger. Then he pulled out his phone. "Ethan Walker. Can we talk tomorrow? After Ava's at school?" Claire's response came immediately, despite the late hour. "Claire Monroe. Of course. Everything okay?" "Ethan Walker. Yeah. I just need to tell you something important." Claire Monroe. "Come to my office at 9. I'll clear my morning." Ethan barely slept. He ran through conversations in his head, trying to find words for feelings he'd barely articulated to himself. When morning came, he went through the routine on autopilot. Breakfast with Ava, walk to the bus stop, train into downtown. His left hand felt heavy, conscious of the ring in a way it hadn't been in months. Claire's office door was open when he arrived at 9. She stood by the window, coffee waiting, concern etched in the lines of her face. "You're scaring me a little," she said as he closed the door. "Whatever it is, just tell me." Ethan took the coffee cup but didn't drink. "I love you. I need you to know that first. Everything I'm about to say comes from a place of loving you completely." "Okay." Claire's voice was careful. "I'm listening." "I'm still wearing Sarah's ring." He held up his left hand. "I've worn it for 8 years. Through her death, through learning to be a single father, through meeting you and falling in love with you. And I didn't think it mattered because you understood about Sarah, about my past, about all of it." "I do understand." "I know. But Ava asked me last night if we were going to get married, and I realized I can't answer that question. Can't even really think about that question. Until I deal with this." He touched the ring. "Not because I want to forget Sarah, not because I don't love her anymore, but because keeping this on while building a future with you feels like I'm stuck between two worlds, and you deserve someone who's fully present in this one." Claire crossed the space between them, taking his hands in hers. "Ethan, I have never asked you to take off that ring. I would never ask you to erase Sarah from your life or pretend she didn't matter. I know you wouldn't. That's why I need to do this for me. For us. He pulled the ring off slowly, feeling the cool air hit skin that hadn't been exposed in nearly a decade. I'm not throwing this away. I'll keep it, give it to Ava when she's older, but I can't wear it anymore. Not if I want to really move forward with you. He set the ring on Claire's desk, his hand feeling strange and light without it. Claire's eyes were bright with tears. Are you sure? I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket, his hand shaking slightly. Because I want to ask you something, and I can't do it while still wearing another woman's ring. Claire's breath caught. Ethan, let me say this before I lose my nerve. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with 3 small diamonds, one for each of them, he'd told the jeweler. Monroe, you walked into my life because of a mistake that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. You saw me when I was invisible. You made space for my daughter in your heart. You taught me that loving again doesn't mean forgetting what came before. I don't have a grand romantic gesture or a perfect speech. I just have this truth. I love you. Ava loves you. And I want to build the rest of my life with you, if you'll have us. He knelt down, the traditional posture feeling both ridiculous and essential. Will you marry me? Claire's tears spilled over. For a long moment, she just stood there, hands pressed to her mouth, and Ethan's heart thundered in his chest. Then she pulled him to his feet and kissed him hard enough to make his head spin. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Claire held up her hand, watching the diamonds catch the morning light streaming through her office windows. I never thought I'd have this, she said quietly. I convinced myself I didn't want it, didn't need it, that I was complete on my own. And now? Now I know I was lying to myself. I wasn't complete. I was just surviving, same as you. She looked at him, her gray eyes luminous. Thank you for taking off the ring, for choosing this, for choosing us. Thank you for being worth choosing. They stood in her office holding each other while the city hummed below them, the future suddenly crystallizing into something real and tangible. Patricia knocked once, then opened the door and stopped short. Oh, should I come back? No, it's fine. Claire pulled away from Ethan, wiping her eyes but not bothering to hide her smile. Actually, Patricia, I need you to clear my calendar for the rest of the day. The board presentation at 2 can be rescheduled. Family emergency. Patricia's gaze dropped to Claire's hand, to the new ring sparkling there, and her expression transformed into pure joy. Oh my goodness, congratulations, both of you. This is wonderful. Thank you, Ethan managed. After Patricia left, practically floating, Claire turned to Ethan. We need to tell Ava, properly, not over the phone, not as an afterthought. This affects her as much as us. Agreed. I can pick her up from school early. We could tell her together? Perfect. And Ethan? Claire touched his face gently. We do this at her pace, the wedding, the move, all of it. She's the most important person in this equation. I love you for saying that. I love you for meaning it. They picked up Ava at noon, signing her out with a promise to the school that it was for a family matter. Ava bounced into the car full of questions about why they were leaving early, if something was wrong, if this was about the new house. Nothing's wrong, Ethan assured her. We just wanted to talk to you about something important. How about we go get ice cream? Ice cream on a school day? This must be really important. They went to Ava's favorite shop in Brookline, ordered 3 sundaes, and settled into a corner booth. Ava attacked her ice cream with enthusiasm, while Ethan and Claire exchanged nervous glances. Finally, Claire spoke. Ava, you know how much your dad and I love each other, right? Duh, you're always making googly eyes at each other. Ethan choked on his ice cream. Googly eyes? It's what Maya calls it when her parents look at each other all mushy. You and Claire do it all the time, Ava grinned. It's kind of gross, but also kind of nice. Claire laughed. Well, because we love each other so much, and because we love you so much, your dad asked me something very important this morning. Did he ask you to marry him? Ava's eyes went wide. Because I told him he should. Is that why we're here? Did you say yes? How did you? Ethan started. I'm 8, not stupid. You took off Mommy's ring, and you both look all happy and nervous. Obviously, you're getting married. Ava bounced in her seat. Can I be in the wedding, please? I want to wear a fancy dress like I told you. Claire reached across the table to take Ava's hand. Of course you can be in the wedding. You're the most important part of this whole thing. But sweetheart, I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to replace your mom. I could never replace her. I'm just hoping to add to your family if that's okay with you. Ava's expression turned serious. I know you're not my mom. I had a mom and she died, and that's really sad. But you're Claire, and you make Daddy happy, and you help me with homework, and you know about volcanoes. That's different, but it's also really good. So you're okay with this? With me marrying your dad? Are you going to keep being nice and making pancakes on Sundays and helping with my science projects? Absolutely. Then, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm better than okay. I'm excited. Ava paused. Can I call you something other than Claire when you're married? Like not Mom, because that's for Mommy, but something that shows your family? Claire's eyes filled with tears. What would you want to call me? Ava thought about it seriously. Maybe Mama Claire? That way it's different from Mom, but still means you're important. Mama Claire. Claire tested the words, her voice breaking. I would be honored to be Mama Claire. Ava launched herself across the booth to hug Claire, nearly knocking over everyone's ice cream in the process. Ethan watched his daughter and his fiancée embrace and felt something that had been broken in him for 3 years finally heal completely. Not because the pain was gone. Sarah's loss would always be part of him, but because he'd learned to carry it alongside joy instead of letting it crowd out everything else. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of logistics and life changes. The house closed in February as planned, and they spent weekends renovating, painting Ava's room the purple she'd insisted on, setting up Claire's office, building shelves in what would become their shared bedroom. Ava helped pick out furniture, gave opinions on curtains, and claimed the backyard for her future garden with the certainty of someone who'd never had outdoor space before. They moved in on a Saturday in early April, a fleet of Ethan's colleagues from Monroe Industries showing up to help haul boxes and furniture. Marcus Chen brought pizza and beer, Patricia arrived with a housewarming gift and tears of joy, and by evening the house was chaos, but recognizably theirs. That night, after Ava had fallen asleep in her new purple room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, Ethan and Claire sat on the back porch watching the sun set over their yard. We did it, Claire said, her hand finding his. We actually built this. Scared? Terrified. Also happier than I've ever been. She turned to look at him. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to realize I don't actually know how to be a wife or a mother figure or any of this. You're doing fine. Better than fine. Ava adores you. I adore her. But Ethan, I'm 43 years old. I've never lived with a partner, never had to compromise on daily decisions, never navigated parenting. What if I'm terrible at it? Then you'll be terrible at it with us, and we'll figure it out together. He pulled her closer. You don't have to be perfect, Claire. You just have to be here. Present. Willing to try. Everything else we can handle. When did you become the wise one? Somewhere between learning to French braid and making volcano models at 2 a.m. They sat in comfortable silence until the stars began appearing overhead, the city lights of Boston visible in the distance but muted here in their pocket of Brookline. This was home now. Not just a house, but a real home built by choice and courage. The wedding planning was surprisingly simple. Neither of them wanted anything elaborate. They settled on a small ceremony in the backyard of their new house in late May, just family and close friends. Ava threw herself into preparations with enthusiasm, insisting on helping choose flowers and designing the invitations. She'd asked to walk both of them down the aisle, a request that had reduced Claire to tears and Ethan to speechless nodding. But as the date approached, Ethan found himself wrestling with one more ghost from his past. Sarah's parents, Ava's grandparents, lived in California and had been sporadic presences since Sarah's death. They'd struggled with their daughter's loss, and maintaining connection with Ava had been painful for everyone. Ethan hadn't told them about Claire yet, hadn't figured out how to explain that he was moving forward, getting remarried, building a new family. 2 weeks before the wedding, he finally called. Margaret Walker answered on the third ring, her voice warm but cautious. "Ethan, this is a surprise." "Hi, Margaret. Is Robert there too? I wanted to talk to you both." 5 minutes later, they were on speakerphone, and Ethan took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell you something before you heard it from anyone else. I'm getting remarried. To someone named Claire. The wedding is in 2 weeks." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Robert spoke. "Remarried. So you've moved on." "I found someone who makes me happy while still honoring Sarah's memory. It's not the same thing as moving on." "And Ava? How does she feel about this?" Margaret's voice was tight. "She's excited. She loves Claire. She's going to walk us both down the aisle." More silence. Then Margaret said, "We should have been told sooner. Sarah's been gone less than 4 years. This feels rushed." "I know how it looks. But Margaret, Robert, I've been alone for 3 years. I've done the grief work. I've made sure Ava was okay. I've built a stable life. Claire isn't a replacement for Sarah. She's someone new who loves both of us and wants to be part of our family. Sarah would want this. She told me so before she died." "Sarah told you to remarry?" Robert's skepticism was evident. "She told me not to stay alone out of misplaced loyalty, that loving someone else wouldn't diminish what we had." Ethan's voice cracked. "I'm not forgetting your daughter. I think about her every day. But I'm also choosing to live instead of just survive. And I'm calling because you're Ava's grandparents, your family, and I want you at the wedding if you can find it in your hearts to support this." The silence stretched so long Ethan thought they'd hung up. Then Margaret spoke, her voice thick with tears. "We've been terrible grandparents. Terrible. We let our pain get in the way of being there for Ava, for you. We're so sorry, Ethan. You lost your daughter. No one expects you to be perfect. But we should have been better for our granddaughter." Margaret took a shaky breath. "Tell us about Claire, please. We want to know who's going to be in Ava's life." So Ethan told them everything. The misdirected text, the science fair, the way Claire had shown up for Ava without hesitation. He told them about the new house, about Ava's purple room, about Claire learning to make chocolate chip pancakes because they were Ava's favorite. He told them the truth, that Claire wasn't replacing their daughter, but honoring the family Sarah had started by helping it grow. When he finished, Margaret was crying openly. "She sounds wonderful. Sarah would have liked her." "I think so too." "We'll be there," Robert said firmly, "for the wedding, and we'll do better, Ethan. We'll be the grandparents Ava deserves. We promise." "Thank you. That means everything." After the call ended, Ethan sat in his office feeling lighter than he had in years. He'd been carrying so much weight, grief, responsibility, the fear of disappointing people who'd already lost too much. But maybe the best way to honor Sarah wasn't to stay frozen in the past. Maybe it was to build something beautiful from the pieces that remained. The wedding day arrived with perfect May weather, sunny but not too hot, a light breeze carrying the scent of the flowering trees they'd planted in the backyard. Ava had been up since dawn, so excited she'd made herself slightly nauseous, and Claire had arrived early to help her get ready. Ethan stood in his bedroom adjusting his tie for the 5th time when someone knocked. He opened the door to find Margaret and Robert Walker, looking older than he remembered, but smiling genuinely. "We're early," Margaret said. "We wanted to see Ava before the ceremony, if that's okay." "She's in her room with Claire. I'll take you." He led them down the hall and knocked on Ava's door. Claire opened it, stunning in a simple cream dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She took in the older couple and understanding crossed her face. "You must be Ava's grandparents. I'm Claire." Margaret pulled her into an unexpected hug. "Thank you for loving our granddaughter, and for loving Ethan. Sarah would be grateful." Ava appeared behind Claire in her purple dress, the fancy one she'd demanded, and launched herself at her grandparents. "Grandma! Grandpa! You came! Are you going to watch me walk Daddy and Mama Claire down the aisle?" "Mama Claire?" Margaret looked at Claire with tears in her eyes. "It's what Ava wanted to call me," Claire explained. "Something that shows I'm family without replacing her mother." "It's perfect," Robert said gruffly. "All of this is perfect." The ceremony was small and intimate. 30 people scattered across chairs in the backyard, fairy lights strung between the trees even though it was daylight. Marcus Chen served as Ethan's best man, Patricia as Claire's maid of honor. And when the music started, Ava walked between them, holding both their hands, beaming like the sun itself. The officiant kept it simple. They'd written their own vows, and when it came time, Ethan spoke first. Claire, when I sent you that message by mistake, I thought I'd destroyed everything. Instead, I'd opened a door I didn't know I needed. You saw me when I was trying to be invisible. You made space for my daughter in your heart without hesitation. You taught me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, and that love doesn't have limits or quotas. I promise to show up for you the way you've shown up for us. I promise to build this life together with honesty and courage and really terrible pancakes when it's my turn to cook. I promise to love you completely, exactly as you are, for the rest of my life. Claire was crying before he finished, and it took her a moment to compose herself enough to speak. Ethan, I spent 42 years building walls, convincing myself that independence was the same as strength, that being alone was a choice and not a defense mechanism. Then you sent me a message meant for your daughter, and everything changed. You taught me what it means to actually live instead of just achieving. You showed me that family isn't something you're born into, but something you build with patience and love and showing up even when it's hard. And Ava, she looked down at the little girl between them. You taught me that love multiplies instead of divides, and that making space in your heart doesn't diminish what's already there. I promise to be the best Mama Claire I can be. I promise to learn about volcanoes and mess up braiding your hair and make pancakes every Sunday. And I promise to love both of you with everything I have, for as long as I live. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The officiant pronounced them married. Ethan kissed his bride while Ava cheered, and their small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was simple. Catered food, a small cake, music playing from speakers someone had rigged up in the garage. Ava danced with her grandparents, with Marcus, with Claire and Ethan both. As the sun set and the fairy lights took over, Ethan found himself standing at the edge of the celebration, watching the people he loved most in the world laughing together. Claire appeared at his elbow, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking? That I almost didn't send that message. I almost deleted it before it went through. But you didn't. But I didn't. And everything that mattered came from that mistake. He turned to face her fully. Thank you for being patient with me, for understanding about Sarah, about the ring, about all of it. Thank you for letting me in. Claire looked across the yard to where Ava was teaching Margaret some complicated dance move. We're really doing this. Building a family from scratch. Not from scratch, from pieces. But yeah, we're really doing it. They stood together watching their wedding reception unfold. The complications they'd navigated to get here transformed into something beautiful and earned. Ava ran over, grabbing both their hands. Come dance, all three of us. It's our wedding, we have to dance together. So they did. The three of them in the center of the backyard under the fairy lights and stars, swaying to music while their friends and family watched. Ethan held Claire with one arm and Ava with the other, and felt complete in a way he hadn't imagined possible 3 years ago when he was just trying to survive one day at a time. The party wound down around 10. Guests departed with hugs and congratulations. Margaret and Robert promised to visit more often, and finally it was just the three of them in their house full of flowers and leftover cake. They tucked Ava into bed together, both of them squeezing onto the edge of her mattress. Best day ever, Ava mumbled, already half asleep. Love you, Daddy. Love you, Mama Claire. Love you too, sweetheart, they said in unison. In their own room, Ethan and Claire got ready for bed, with the comfortable intimacy of people who'd already built a life together. Claire took off her dress, hung it carefully, and climbed into bed wearing one of Ethan's old t-shirts. He joined her, pulling her close. Mrs. Walker, he said softly. I kept my name professionally, but I like the sound of that here. She tilted her head to kiss him. How are you feeling? Really? Happy, terrified, grateful. All of it at once. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I took off Sarah's ring 4 months ago, and I haven't regretted it once. That feels significant. It is significant. It means you're ready for this. For us. I am, completely. He tightened his arms around her. I love you, Claire. Thank you for taking a chance on a guy who texted you by mistake. Thank you for being brave enough to let me in. Claire settled against his chest, her breathing already evening out toward sleep. Best mistake either of us ever made. Ethan lay awake a while longer, listening to his wife breathe, knowing his daughter was safe down the hall, feeling the weight of the ring on his left hand. Different from Sarah's, but no less meaningful. He'd spent 3 years convinced that the text he'd sent to Claire was the worst mistake of his life. But lying here in the house they'd chosen together, married to a woman who taught him that survival and living were different things, he understood the truth. The message hadn't been wrong. Just early. Love didn't arrive perfectly packaged with clear instructions. It showed up in mistakes in science fairs and the courage to take off a ring that had become armor instead of remembrance. It showed up in a woman who'd spent her life building walls, finally choosing to let them down. It showed up in a little girl wise enough to understand that love multiplied instead of divided. The wrong message had been exactly right. It had just taken them a while to understand that sometimes the best things in life arrive when you're not looking for them, in forms you never expected, asking you to be brave enough to choose joy over safety. And Ethan had chosen. They both had. And the life they'd built from that choice, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect, was worth every moment of fear it had taken to get here. He kissed Claire's hair, whispered, I love you, into the darkness, and let sleep finally claim him. Tomorrow they'd wake up as a family, officially and completely. They'd make pancakes and probably burn them because it was his turn to cook. They'd start the rest of their lives together. But tonight, Ethan Walker fell asleep next to his wife in the home they'd built, their daughter safe down the hall, and felt nothing but gratitude for the mistake that had saved them all. The message had been meant for Ava, but in the end, it had been meant for all of them. Love you, sweet dreams. The words that started everything, the words that would carry them forward, the words that proved sometimes the wrong person receiving your message is exactly the right person after all.